Hi folks. A couple in our church have been happily married for 47 years. At the beginning of this year, his wife had a nervous breakdown. It was quite serious, but also we have to say it was totally out of the blue. No one saw it coming, and there was no reason why we should see it coming, because she'd had no problems like this before. Eventually she finished up in hospital under psychiatric care, and the whole of our church took it upon themselves to pray for her, as we've prayed for so many folks over the years, and we've seen the healing hand of God in our church. Her husband dug deep into his faith like he'd never done before. Eventually she came out of hospital and she received treatment at home for a while, but very quickly returned to normal. And this experience has deepened the faith of both of them, not to mention the effect it's had upon our church. At some point they decided to renew their wedding vows. And so last Sunday, the 26th of May, we had a service during which they did just that. And we wrapped the whole service around the fact that they were renewing their wedding vows. I gave a word which was personal to them for a sermon which was about 15 minutes long, and it was directed at both of them. I've decided to show it on the web, and just in case it might encourage anyone else who is going through problems right now, and heavens above, we're all going through some kind of problem. Two things I want to comment about this film. The first thing is, in order to understand a couple of jokes that I make during the talk, I have to tell you that his name is David, like King David. Her name is Ruth, and their surname is Saul, so that's David and Ruth Saul. You need to keep this in mind, and it will help you to understand a couple of jokes that I crack while I'm preaching. The second thing you need to understand is that a friend of mine was shooting with my camera and filmed the talk, but he's not quite used to my kind of camera, so the focus is out a little bit. But in spite of all this, I hope the talk helps some of you. So here it goes. So I'm going to read that psalm, Psalm 23, a psalm by David, King David of Israel. The Lord is my shepherd, there is nothing I lack. He lets me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He renews my life. He leads me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even when I go through the darkest valley, I fear no danger. For you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Only goodness and faithful love will pursue me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord as long as I live. What about that good? These words that I've just read were, of course, written by King David. He was a man who knew what it was like to rise to the heights. He was a shepherd boy that became the king of Israel. But also he knew what it was like to sink to the depths. He been there, done it, got the t-shirt, would be said by David. He wasn't a very large man in stature, but this guy was a giant in faith. With this guy, he was a giant. He was a giant slayer and a giant himself. You know, he knew how to put things right when he did something wrong. Yeah. We all need to know that, don't we? Yeah. Because we all do something wrong, don't we? He knew how to put it right, yeah. And that's something we all need to learn. He knew how to face danger and how to cling on
to his God while the danger was surrounding him. He knew how to get up when circumstances knocked him down, as they did many times with David. You know, David is a perfect example to all Christians, simply because he was a very human man. He was very flawed, was David. Very flawed. Nothing perfect about this man. He was flawed, but yet he was a man of God. Do you know the two can go together? We can be flawed and yet be people of God. So David was a man of the flesh, but he was also a man of God. You know, folks, in today's world, if you hang around churches, or if you read newspapers for that matter, you will be aware that it's becoming very difficult to be a Christian in our society today. And the Bible predicted that it would be. Said that it would be. There are strange and unnatural forces at work in our world and in our country. Maybe some of you are aware of them. If not, come and see me afterwards. I'll tell you what's going on. And we all need to learn to cling on to God through and during these dark days. Because we are getting into darker and darker days, and we need to learn how to cling onto God. We're living in days when child murder and child rape and child abduction are increasing. Have you ever read so many? I'm 70 years old. I've read a few newspapers about the news in this country. I've never read or heard about so much of this in our country as there is right now. A young soldier was brutally murdered and beheaded in broad daylight in front of witnesses by people who apparently don't agree with the British way of life, though they're happy to live here and get whatever benefits they can, but they don't agree with our way of life. And these days that we're living in are days when the government thinks that it's God and they can redefine marriage. I thought that was God's prerogative. It's not the church's duty, it's not the government's duty, but the government are now taking it upon themselves to redefine marriage. And as a consequence of this, democracy is falling apart in this country, folks. There is no democracy anymore. We do what the government say. No democracy. And yet, listen to these words of King David, because right now we need to hear them and to believe them. Even when I go through the darkest valley, I feel fear, no danger. For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Dave and Ruth have just walked through a dark valley, didn't you? Without any warning at all, trouble just struck in their home. No one saw it coming, no one knew that it was going to come. I thought that Ruth had got the flu. She went for a flu jab, didn't you? Thought you got the flu, and that she went through an awful, terrible time of depression. And both of them together were plunged into a dark place. And there didn't seem to be a way out, did there, at the time? But you know, both of these two clung on to that great shepherd of their souls, didn't you? And now, after some time has elapsed, they've come bouncing back. Isn't it strange that King David's, I'm going to tell a joke now, King David's problem, Dave, was a fellow called Saul. And we've got a David and a Saul, but they're here in perfect harmony. The other David and Saul couldn't make it, but this David and Saul have made it in harmony. Yeah, all through your difficulties. David and Ruth, I want to tell you that you're an encouragement to all of us, far more than you'll ever realise. You're an encouragement to us. It's not because you're perfect. Did you know you're not perfect? Have you figured that one out yet? He says, I know she ain't. So it's not because you're perfect that you're an encouragement to us. It's because of how you've handled your imperfections. That's what we all need to see, how people handle their imperfections, just like King David did. how you've gone through trouble, but you've come out the other side. You haven't lost your faith, you haven't cursed God and turned away. You've come out stronger in your faith. Do you remember that song, Dave? I know you will. Like a rubber ball, I'll come bouncing back to you. Remember that? Oh, that was a good song, wasn't it? What was that?
Bobby V.
Bobby V. You two have come bouncing back like that rubber ball. You've been there, but you've come bouncing back. And you're stronger for it. Isn't that true? You know, one of the things that the devil wants to do, I'm sure you've figured this out by now, he wants to knock us off course. Every one of us, he wants to knock us off course.
Yeah.
And he doesn't care how he does it, and he doesn't care who gets hurt along the way. He doesn't care about that. You see, he's completely ruthless. Now, Dave is not ruthless. Got it? You think I should be on the stage? Dave's not ruthless, but the devil is ruthless. He doesn't care who gets hurt, as long as he can accomplish knocking us off the path. You see, he can't have what we've got. He wants it, but he can't have it. It's too late for him. He can't have it. And what we have is eternal salvation through Jesus Christ. It's not our faith, it's through his grace. It gives us faith. Through Jesus Christ we have eternal salvation. But the devil likes nothing better to try and snatch it away from you. Take it away. It's the one big accomplishment he's after doing with all of us. Well, he didn't succeed with David and Ruth. He had a good go, but he didn't succeed, did he? No. Because like King David, I'm getting confused with the Davids here, they walked through the dark valley and came out the other side with Christ at the helm of their ship. Isn't that wonderful? And this is true, isn't it? So the lesson that I suggest we learn from these two and what they've been through and where they are today is never, never, never give up. You get that? Never give up your faith in Jesus Christ. Hebrews 10:39 says this: we are not of them who draw back unto perdition. That means perdition is a lost condition that's going to hell. We are not of those people, it says, but we are of them that believe to the saving of our soul. Even though we may walk through dark places, we continue to the saving of our soul. See, there's nothing to be gained in giving up. What are you going to get out of giving up? Troubles that come, and they come to all of us, they're simply a test. Simply a test to see what we will do with those troubles. Right? Whether we will fall apart and give up, or as you black country people say, give neck. Is that right? Is that what black country say? Or whether we will rise up in faith and overcome those problems. There's no saying it. This is ad lib, so don't tell God how big your problems are. Tell your problems how big God is. Right? And the previous verse to the one I read from Hebrews 10:39 says this: that God takes no pleasure in those who draw back. Takes no pleasure. So if we're going to let the devil win and fall by the wayside, God will take no pleasure in us at all. But when he looks at the likes of David and Ruth, who've overcome their problems, they've stood up and recounted, they've stood up and said, we will go on with the Lord. God takes great pleasure in us. Do you know God's taking great pleasure in you too right now? Okay. I'm going to finish right now because I'm told that there's a lot of good food back there and I can't wait to get into it. But there was a man called Adrian Plass. Have you heard of Adrian Plass? David Platt. Is he a footballer? Yeah. No, this is Adrian Platt. He's a caricaturist. What he does, he caricatures human experience. Now, Adrian Plass is a Christian, so he does Christian caricaturism. And he caricatures some of the difficulties that we go through in the Christian life. And he pokes fun at it all. He makes everybody laugh. But I want to tell you something about Adrian Plass. Many, many years ago, the man fell into deep, deep depression. terrible depression. Not sure exactly if he was suicidal as a result, but the depression was enormous. It was mega. And he went to a Church of England, and his vicar called round, knocked on the door, said, "Can I come in? I want to see Adrian." And he went up to Adrian and he said, "Adrian, I've got a word for you. It's a word of encouragement. And this is it, Adrian. Your experience now will become your future ministry.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Your experience now,
Amen.
depression,
Yes.
horror,
Yeah.
blackness,
Mm.
that experience now
Yeah.
will become your future ministry.
Amen.
And if ever there was a truer word spoken in that man's life, it was
Yeah.
in him. That man makes us roar with laughter as he caricatures the unpleasant difficulties of life.
Yeah.
So everything he went through is now his ministry.
Yeah.
And I want to tell you that the same thing will apply to you
Yeah.
too.
It's
That
good.
what you've been through will become a future ministry
Yeah.
to other people in need. You will draw from your experience, and particularly you, Ruth, because you were the one going through it. You will draw from that and you will learn to minister to others in need. So be open to God using both of you in the future. And that's all I want to say. Now we're going to sing our final song, and I'm sure that you all know this one.